There are some serial killers. What makes them frightening isn't only how many people they killed. What's truly frightening is that they could have been stopped much earlier, yet weren't. The Harvey Carignan file was exactly that kind of case. At some point, the system could have ended him, but it didn't. And what emerged from that gap turned into a nightmare, later known as Hammer Harvey. The killer was caught, then released and attacked again, as if the system opened the door for him again, every time. Even Hammer Harvey's childhood didn't point to a stable life. He was seen as troubled even as a child. He ended up in reform school. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but the real breaking point came after adolescence. In 1949, in Alaska, he killed a woman. Then he attacked another woman. But he was caught and sentenced to death. Normally, the story could have ended here, but it didn't. What was striking in Hammer Harvey's file wasn't the murder, it was justice retreating, because his death sentence didn't remain in place. Irregularities in the interrogation process came into play. His statements were deemed questionable, and once again, a serial killer slipped back out of the system's grasp before being fully stopped. Years passed. He was released from the case he had been imprisoned for, and when he got out, the rage inside him hadn't stopped. What defined Hammer Harvey's file was his method. He often chose his victims on the road when they were alone or vulnerable. He picked them up in his car, drove them out of town, and then attacked with a hammer. The attacks weren't only about killing. They involved sexual violence, there was torture, and there was a rage aimed at crushing the victim with the hammer. Some died, some survived by a miracle. And it was these survivors who made it possible for the case to be solved. One woman escaped by jumping from a fast-moving vehicle. Another survived the attack. 2 teenage girls managed to escape at a gas station. These attacks, which seemed disconnected, began pointing to the same man. And the police began linking files across different states. At this point, Hammer Harvey was no longer just a suspect. He was the face of a nightmare that had been haunting them for years. After the raids, a map found among Hammer Harvey's belongings pushed the case into even more chilling territory. There were 181 red circles drawn across the US and Canada. Some seemed to mean nothing. Others strangely overlapped with missing women, attacks, or unsolved murders. And that raised this question. Was Hammer Harvey really only responsible for the few known victims, or did the circles on the map point to a much larger hunting ground? They never learned for sure. Hammer Harvey's defense was as dark as he was. Because he had previously been diagnosed with schizophrenia, he tried to build a defense around his mental state. He said he received messages from God, but it didn't have the effect on the jury that he expected. He was convicted. He received long sentences and was tried repeatedly across different cases. But no matter how large the total sentences looked, the victims' families didn't feel fully satisfied that justice had been served. So maybe the system had finally stopped him, though late, but the murdered women didn't come back. What makes the Harvey Carignan file chilling isn't only that he killed with a hammer. What makes this file different is that a monster could slip through the system's gaps for years. He could have been stopped after the first major murder, but he wasn't. He could have been stopped after the releases, but he wasn't. And with every return, he left new devastation behind. Maybe the darkest part of this story is exactly this. Sometimes what makes a serial killer dangerous isn't only the rage inside him. Sometimes it's the system that gives him chance after chance.